the Mavericks. They played on Monday night. We did not get to see Klay Thompson, but we did see the fact that this is a brand new roster. They lost Tim Hardaway. They lost Josh Green. They lost Eric Jones. They replaced those guys with Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes, and Spencer Dinwiddie. Now, I think the consensus overall has been that the Mavericks got better here this offseason. I don't think it's some guarantee. I know the biggest discrepancy between the Mavericks and the Celtics was the three-point shooting. Boston took 41 of their shots from three per game. The Mavericks barely took over 30. The Celtics had threats everywhere on the floor. The Mavericks had holes on every lineup. And Klay helps. Klay definitely helps. But I'm not convinced on Najee Marshall. I'm not convinced on Spencer Dinwiddie. Not convinced on Quentin Grimes. If you look at Najee Marshall, last year he shot almost 40% from three for the Pelicans, but he was below 30% in his previous 3 years of his career. He was below 30% in his 3 years in college. You look at Quentin Grimes, he had a great stretch with the Knicks at the end of the 22-23 season. He has done nothing since then. He's been provided chances. Those chances were taken by DiVincenzo. Meanwhile, Grimes pouted on the bench. Spencer Dinwiddie was very good last time he was in Dallas. He's done nothing since then with the Nets or the Lakers. And then even with Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, love him, Hall of Famer. Still a great shooter, but no longer an elite shooter, at least statistically. If you pull up Klay's numbers, pre-injury, he was 41.5% from three in the playoffs. That's dropped to 37.8% in the playoffs since the injury. His percentages in the regular season have also dropped too. So you Warriors fans became frustrated with his shot selection. He became more erratic, more mid-range jumpers, more me-first shots. The Warriors didn't want to overpay for good reason, and Dallas got him on a fair contract. But it's not like the Mavericks are getting prime Klay.
Nope.
43%, 44% Klay Thompson from three, flamethrower Klay. So I get all these additions, and I get the excitement for the Dallas Mavericks, but I'm not sold they actually got better. Whereas with Minnesota and a lot of the other teams in the West, like the Thunder, I think they very clearly did get better.
So there's a lot of talk about Klay Thompson as the Ray Allen for this team. Ray Allen was 37. When he was with the Miami Heat. 37. Klay Thompson
is over 40% from three his last couple years with Boston.
And he was coming off the bench. And so he was able to play 20 minutes and be really good in those 20 minutes. And he closed games for them for sure. But I don't think people realize like how good Ray Allen was. Like the idea of Ray Allen, I think they envision like late stage Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, Ray Allen. This dude could do so much more than just shoot. And so Klay Thompson, I think, he's going to be able to get those corner threes from Luka Doncic, and the Dallas Mavericks created more corner threes than any team in the NBA last year during the regular season. But Klay Thompson is like mediocre-ish from the corners. It's not like he's 50% from the corners like you'd expect. If you look at the numbers, I think he's like 39%, which sounds good, but just about everybody shoots 39% or better from the corners. So you're paying a premium in terms of the acquisition and the hype around Klay Thompson when you probably could have gotten that kind of replacement value three-point shooting with Luka Doncic from a lot of different players that probably could have been a lot cheaper in terms of that contract. Klay Thompson defensively is a problem, and not in the social media problem. Yeah, exactly. Like it's a problem in the 2005 sense where it's like, I don't know how this team upgraded defensively. I know they improved in the postseason, and Derek Lively and Daniel Gaffer were much better than we expected given their lack of postseason experience. But Derek Jones Jr. was really good for them last year in this role. And I got to say, I'm a huge Najee Marshall fan. I think actually that might be the best acquisition from like a Klay Thompson standpoint. The rest of their roster, I think Najee Marshall, I love him. I think you kind of have to see him in person to like really appreciate
Najee. Do you love him if he's shooting below 30% though, Tom? Or is it only last year's Najee Marshall? Because I love last year's Najee Marshall. I'm a huge Marshall fan from last season. But prior to that, yeah, he's fine. He's okay.
He's okay, but I want more. I want to see more Najee Marshall if last year was legit. And sample size wasn't great. He was taking just a couple three-pointers at a pretty good percentage, not lights out. But I love his game. He's 7'1" wingspan. I think he's a better playmaker than people give him credit for, at least that he's shown. I know it's just like a scrimmage or what have you, but I think this guy, people love him. He's going to be a fan favorite in Dallas in ways that I think New Orleans fans loved watching this guy play. And when you see him, He's always jawing at the other team. He's just an energy guy. And I would love to see if that kind of spacing continues with Dallas, because as we know, Luka Doncic is always going to find you if you're open. And he has such a gravity out there that he's going to get more open 3-point shots than what he saw in New Orleans last year. As good as Zion is at distributing and finding open shooters, I think there's nobody better than Luka Doncic at doing that. So I'm hopeful that Najee Marshall can capitalize on last season with more open threes. The thing about Klay Thompson, though, is playing next to Steph Curry, he's going to get open threes a lot, and still, he's not in that elite category that he needs to be to make himself worth that contract.
Sure. And I think with Najee Marshall, you see him set as a screener sometimes. Right now in preseason, we're seeing a ton of teams using inverted ball screens. Devin Booker's setting screens. You got Gabe Vincent setting screens for LeBron James. It's happening everywhere where teams are trying to find their own Drew Holiday, their own Derek White, like Boston did. And Dallas last year would use Derek Jones as a screener for Luka. And Jones was a high flyer. Najee Marshall is not that, but he is more of a playmaker, like you said, where Luka could find him on a switch or off the short roll and he can make a play off the dribble. He's more than just a one-dimensional guy like Derek Jones as a lob threat. So I think Dallas is going to try to use him in creative ways. So even if the shot isn't working, he can add something, but the shot does need to work. It has to.
It has to work.
These guys need to.
And usually in Dallas, with playing next to Luka Doncic, you're going to hit your shots. And I do also want to make note, Najee Marshall said all he wants to do out there is throw lobs to Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. And I want that. I want more of it. I called it Lob City Dallas last year when they made the big trade at the deadline for PJ Washington and getting those guys in the fold and basically dunking on everybody. I love Najee Marshall's game. And I will say, if his 3-point shot isn't falling, this could get really ugly in terms of the offseason acquisitions for Dallas.